Books Fail Forward: Why Failure is a Learning Process, Not a Final Judgment. In every classroom, every workplace, and every personal journey, one word tends to carry a heavy emotional weight: failure. It's the red mark on a test paper, the missed opportunity, the rejected proposal, the broken promise. For many, failure feels like a verdict, a final judgment on one's ability, worth, or potential. But this perception is not only misleading, it's deeply damaging. Because in truth, failure is not a dead end. It's a detour. A recalibration. A lesson in disguise. Let's reframe the narrative: failure is feedback. It's the most honest teacher you'll ever have. It doesn't sugarcoat. It doesn't flatter. It shows you exactly where your understanding breaks down, where your preparation fell short, and where your assumptions need to be challenged. In education, this is especially powerful. A wrong answer on a math test isn't just a mistake, it's a signal. It tells the student, here's where your thinking needs refinement. And when that signal is embraced rather than feared, it becomes the starting point for real growth. Consider how children learn to walk. They don't study biomechanics or read manuals. They try. They fall. They wobble. They fail again and again. But each fall teaches them something: how to balance, how to shift weight, how to coordinate movement. Eventually, those failures accumulate into mastery. The same principle applies to learning any skill, whether it's solving equations, writing essays, or navigating relationships. Failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of it. In fact, the most successful learners are not the ones who avoid failure. They are the ones who engage with it. They ask questions like, why didn't this work? What can I do differently next time? What did I miss? These questions transform failure from a source of shame into a source of insight. They foster metacognition. The ability to think about one's own thinking, which is one of the most powerful tools in education. When students reflect on their mistakes, they begin to understand not just the content, but the process of learning itself. They become more strategic, more self-aware, and more resilient. This mindset shift also has profound emotional benefits. When failure is seen as a learning process, it loses its sting. Students no longer feel defined by a bad grade or a missed answer. Instead, they see themselves as evolving learners, people who are in the process of becoming, not being. This reduces anxiety, boosts confidence, and encourages risk-taking. And risk-taking is essential for creativity, innovation, and deep understanding. Let's take this idea beyond the classroom. In life, failure shows up in countless forms: failed relationships, failed businesses, failed goals. But in each case, the principle remains the same. Failure provides data. It tells you what didn't work, what needs to change, and what you might try next. It's a diagnostic tool, not a repeat button. Resilience is built through repetition and reflection. Resilience is often misunderstood. People think it's something you're born with: a natural toughness, a hardened shell, a personality trait reserved for the brave. But that's not true. Resilience is not a fixed quality. It's a skill. And like any skill, it's built through practice. Through repetition. Through reflection. Through the quiet, persistent decision to keep going when it would be easier to give up. In education, resilience is one of the most powerful predictors of long-term success. Not intelligence. Not talent. Not even motivation. It's the ability to bounce back after failure, to learn from mistakes, and to keep showing up. And this ability doesn't come from a single moment of triumph, it comes from 1,000 small moments of effort. Let's start with repetition. In learning, repetition is the engine of mastery. Whether it's solving math problems, practicing a musical instrument, or writing essays, the act of doing something again and again builds familiarity, confidence, and competence. But repetition alone isn't enough. It's not just about doing, it's about doing with intention. That's where reflection comes in. Reflection turns repetition into growth. It's the process of asking, what worked? What didn't? What can I do differently next time? Without reflection, repetition can become mindless. But with reflection, it becomes transformative. It allows learners to adjust their strategies, deepen their understanding, and develop a sense of ownership over their progress. This cycle, try, fail, reflect, repeat, is the foundation of resilience. It teaches students that setbacks are not signs of weakness, but invitations to grow. It shows them that learning is not linear, but iterative. And it empowers them to take control of their journey. Consider a student preparing for an exam. They study hard, take the test, and receive a disappointing grade. At this point, they have two choices. They can internalize the failure, believe they're not smart enough, not capable enough, not good enough. Or they can engage in reflection. They can ask, where did I go wrong? Did I misunderstand the material? Did I manage my time poorly? Did I let anxiety get the best of me? These questions lead to insights. And those insights lead to better preparation next time. This process doesn't just improve academic performance, it builds emotional strength. It teaches students to face discomfort, to sit with disappointment, and to respond with curiosity rather than shame. Over time, this builds a mindset that is not just resilient, but anti-fragile, one that grows stronger through challenge. Educators play a crucial role in fostering this mindset. When teachers create environments where mistakes are welcomed, where effort is praised, and where reflection is encouraged, they help students build resilience. They shift the focus from perfection to progress, from outcomes to process, from fear to growth. Man-walking progress requires action, even when imperfect. In the pursuit of success, whether academic, professional, or personal, there's a common trap that many fall into: waiting. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting until they feel ready. Waiting until every detail is figured out. But here's the truth: progress doesn't come from waiting. It comes from doing. And often, the doing is messy, uncertain, and far from perfect. This is one of the most liberating truths in education and in life. You don't need to have all the answers before you begin. You don't need to be flawless to move forward. You simply need to act. Because action is the catalyst for growth. It's the spark that ignites momentum. And it's the only way to turn potential into progress. Let's start with the classroom. Students often hesitate to participate, ask questions, or submit work unless they feel completely confident. They fear being wrong, being judged, or being misunderstood. But this fear of imperfection can be paralyzing. It creates a culture of silence, of hesitation, of missed opportunities. And ironically, it slows down the very learning they're trying to protect. The truth is, learning is inherently imperfect. It's a process of trial and error, of exploration and revision. No one masters a concept on the first try. No one writes a perfect essay without drafts. No one solves a complex problem without making mistakes. The students who grow the most are not the ones who avoid error, they're the ones who engage with it. Who take action, reflect, and refine. This principle applies to educators as well. Teachers often strive to create flawless lesson plans, deliver perfect lectures, and manage classrooms without a hitch. But teaching, like learning, is dynamic. It requires flexibility, experimentation, and responsiveness. The best educators are not those who never stumble, they're those who adapt. Who try new methods, assess outcomes, and adjust accordingly. Their willingness to act, even when uncertain, sets the tone for a growth-oriented environment. Now let's zoom out to life beyond education. In careers, relationships, and personal development, the same rule holds: progress demands movement. You can read every book on entrepreneurship, but until you launch something, you haven't started. You can plan every detail of a fitness routine, but until you take that first walk, you haven't changed. You can dream of writing a novel, but until you write the first paragraph, it's just an idea. Imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. Why? Because action creates feedback. It gives you something to work with. When you act, you learn what works and what doesn't. You discover strengths you didn't know you had and weaknesses you need to address. You gain experience, insight, and confidence. And most importantly, you build momentum. Momentum is a powerful force. Once you start moving, even in small ways, it becomes easier to keep going. One step leads to another. One idea leads. In the pursuit of success, whether academic, professional, or personal, there's a common trap that many fall into: waiting. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting until they feel ready. Waiting until every detail is figured out. But here's the truth: progress doesn't come from waiting. It comes from doing. And often, the doing is messy, uncertain, and far from perfect. This is one of the most liberating truths in education and in life. You don't need to have all the answers before you begin. You don't need to be flawless to move forward. You simply need to act. Because action is the catalyst for growth. It's the spark that ignites momentum. And it's the only way to turn potential into progress. Let's start with the classroom. Students often hesitate to participate, ask questions, or submit work unless they feel completely confident. They fear being wrong, being judged, or being misunderstood. But this fear of imperfection can be paralyzing. It creates a culture of silence, of hesitation, of missed opportunities. And ironically, it slows down the very learning they're trying to protect. The truth is, learning is inherently imperfect. It's a process of trial and error, of exploration. So, what does it truly mean to succeed?